Hello and welcome to Ivory Blush Roses. My name is Lisa and today we're going to do episode 5 of our stitching rambles. I've got kitties sitting in the window getting into trouble, so we'll see how that goes. I did film an episode 5 when I worked on the last seam. Unfortunately, I discovered that my microphone was not connected properly, and so there was no sound with it. So I'll show you a little bit about what I did in that last seam that I worked on. I stitched this seam. I added some silk ribbon embroidery with these little ribbon stitch leaves and some little Fargo roses. They were a lot of fun to do. And I added some square beads, and then these are an oval rhinestone type bead. And I really love how that seam turned out. So it's September 15th today, so I obviously did not get this completed before the end of August like I had hoped. I've had a toothache and an infection, and I think it's actually all risen out of a chronic sinus infection I've been having trouble with. I've been struggling a little bit because it's been impacting my eyesight in the left eye, so you may see me with my sewing glasses on, which if I look up I can't see a thing out of them, but it does make a huge difference in what I can see when I'm working. I'm down to 4 seams left to stitch, and I may be finishing this one off camera. I'm not sure. I want to get it done because I have a couple other things that I really want to work on that we talked about in the last episode. It's time to get stitching. Let's get going. Today I have 2 seams that don't have beads on them, so I'm hoping I can get both of them finished in today's stitching. I want to take a look first at what those stitches were like when we did them in the Joyful Embellishments group. Again, I'm using Valerie Bothell's book on Joyful Daily Stitching, which originated out of that group. And I'm looking up those stitches here, and actually neither one of these seams that I thought needed beads had beads on them originally. I know I didn't always follow her instructions exactly, so I think I may change this and add some beads. So let's get started. So let's take a little closer look at these 2 seams and what I want to do with them today. I have this one, and it just needs a little something. I don't think it needs a lot. I know somewhere I have these beads here. They're kind of a matte green bead. Would actually be great down here, and I love carrying things through from other parts, and I think just one of those in each of the triangles would probably provide all the interest that this particular one needs. It'd be low key so it wouldn't subtract attention from these beads, and I think that's going to do really good. So let me turn the camera off. I'm going to go find those beads, then we'll come back and get started. Alright, so I'm pretty sure I found those. So I think these are actual stone beads, but I think if we just put one of those in each of these areas here, well, here's hopefully, because these have a little teeny tiny hole in them. Oh my gosh, if I can't even see this these days. There it is. Alright, so putting those right in the middle, and I think if we zoom in, you can see that a little bit easier. I think just having one of those in each of those triangles is going to be all we need. Let's get out a few of these. And I think we'll get a couple extras for good measure. This table, I haven't figured out why it squeaks so badly. I love working on this table, but I don't like the squeaking. It makes it hard for filming. Okay, and as we've talked about before, I always cut a little extra long thread when I am beading, just because you just eat it up so fast. Put a good knot in it, and then I'm just pulling down my thread to get that needle settled, hopefully right at the apex, a thimble, and here we go. So this has been quite a week for me. I have had so much going on. It's not been an easy week by any means. I don't know if I can get through that. If I remember right, I had to play with these last time. I'm going to put out a bunch more because we may need to try out different beads to see what we can get through the needle. unfortunately, I've lost one of my closest friends this week to cancer. We've been friends for over 35 years, and it was one of the few people that I got together with on a really frequent basis. And the reality is, I'm pretty heartbroken. What else has happened? That was one of many things going on. I had to replace my windshield. I actually had a windshield crack, and then the crack separated, leaving about 1/8 of an inch gap. So I had to take care of that. That was a whole story in and of itself, but I'll spare you that one. Now I have this chronic sinus infection I can't get rid of. My face is swollen, and I've got a headache, and my eyes hurt, and so I'm glad I can come in and stitch. I've gotten to work a few shifts at the garden center, which has been a blessing. Deeply grateful for that. But I'm also struggling finding a part-time job. That's perfect. That just was that little bit that seam needed. I'm much happier with that. So now let's turn our attention to this one. And I want to, again, look back. What have I used? This one was just French knots here. Those are interesting little brown ones. I think the ones I'm interested in are these green ones. They might be too dark. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't think they're gonna go. They're too dark. Okay, what else do we have? None of those. These are more green than that last one. That's more, I like that. I don't dislike that. I sort of wish I had just some opaque orangey ones. But again, I gotta come back and look and see what we've done. I do have these little bronze ones, and they're not very big, which might actually be just about perfect here. I think that actually might be just what I need here. So let's put these two green ones back and snap that up. I do have bigger ones. I think I like the little one because I think with the little one, and they do fit through that needle, they're not going to be overpowering. Since I've got a couple of bulkier seams there, I want something that's not quite as stand-out-ish, I guess. So let's try these. So yeah, I think this is going to go by pretty quickly. So, and I'm just going to go, if you look at this more closely, they've just got these three kind of grassy stems, and I'm just going to put a bead at the end of each one of those. I think that's what we're going to do. So, and I work better if I work from near me to further away. Now, on this one, I've been leaving this area open, so I'm not going to do this one. I'm going to start with the second one here. So I'm trying to come up just at the end of that. And we're just going to, oh my gosh. Try to pick pick up a bead and stitch it. We're just going to do that right at the end of each one of these. Hi, Mushu. There he is. I need to watch this because I realized on one of the other seams I have that I had some loops of thread sticking out that I'm going to have to come back and deal with. There we go. Yeah, it's just a little tiny bit of bling. Again, if you can see here, it's just a little bit. Once I photograph it in better light, they'll be easier to see. And I'm just coming right up at the end of each stem. Oh, she'll get out of there. He's trying to drink my water. But with this, then I can just work and finish each other seam that we have completely, and that will be good. Just want to check, make sure I'm not. Like I said, I am ready to get this one done and out of the way. I have a lot of other things I want to work on, and I'm really excited about working on the autumn bell pull. I'd like to get that started so that maybe I could have it finished by the end of October. We'll see. And then we can move on to some other projects. So all of a sudden, it's just really wanting to get some of these old projects finished, and I've been enjoying just sitting here and chatting to you. And hope you'll chat back in the comments. So it's also been garden cleanup season. In my garden this year I had planted a bunch of these hot pink 4 o'clocks, and they ran down the center of my main bed, but they got kind of floppy and they just sort of took over and it shaded everything else out. They ended up not being the best choice in my main bed. So I went through and I pulled all of those away, gathered a lot of seed, so if I decide I want to use them somewhere else, I can try that. And then I have been collecting some white perennials that I wanted to put down the center of that bed. And so I had gotten a couple of them planted once I took the 4 o'clocks out. Let's come back in here so you can actually see what I'm doing. See if that works better. I had put a lot of iris in that bed when I first set up the bed. I had to move them kind of at the last minute. Winter was coming very quickly. And so I just healed them all in the middle of that bed, and I planted them deeply because I was planting them much later than I should have, and I wanted to make sure that they survived. They took up too much space and was not what I wanted in that bed. And I've already moved a bunch of them to other places where I did want them, and I had a lot of extras. And I came across a couple who had recently moved to the area and left behind a huge iris garden. And so yesterday they came and picked those up, and they've already got them planted, and it allowed me to get the rest of my stuff planted. So my beds are ready for fall, and I think that next year the roses are going to have so much more space. I think it's just going to be a much better scenario all the way around. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm really glad to get that done. And you know, even the petunias, just those 4 o'clocks, I don't know if they kept them from blooming or they were shading them out. Usually my beds still look really nice at this point in the year, but there's hardly a thing blooming right now because of those 4 o'clocks. So I've trimmed a lot of stuff up, and I'm hoping that maybe, since our weather is still warm despite fall coming on, I'm hoping that maybe I can get another flush of bloom out of some of those petunias. I'm pretty pleased with how that's looking. It just gives that little bit of extra that it needed. So a lot of garden work. Been collecting seeds from some of the hollyhocks, and I've put a few in. It's probably a little bit late, but hollyhocks are biennial, so it means that it takes 2 years of a plant before you get blooms. So I'm hoping that some of them will pop up enough that next year I'll have some blooms. I'm going to kind of do a mix of hollyhocks and sunflowers along the back side of my shed next year. I also have a rose there, which hopefully is going to really take off next year. I love roses, and I've had really good success with roses in other gardens, but I'm really struggling in this house. I'd sure love to get those a little healthier. I think they've just been too crowded, for one, and we had that really hard winter this past winter, so it set them all back. Here's hoping next year is a better year for the roses. We'll see how they fare over the winter. So we've had a pretty cool day here. It's cloudy outside, which is why the light in here may be a little less than usual, because it's just pretty dim. I've been stitching quite a bit on my cathedral window project, which I mentioned in the last Ramblings video. And again, that one will be a big video coming once I complete that. It's taken these rambling sessions to kind of help me get my stitching mojo back, so to speak. And I'm really glad to be stitching again on a more regular basis, and have been enjoying it and thinking about projects I want to work on. And my goal is to start no new projects that hasn't already been in the works until I get some of these older ones finished. I've downsized my stash a lot here in the last few months, so I have a lot less fabric. I've kept some things, like I've kept all my beads and most of my lace. I did get rid of all the polyester lace. I like working with natural fibers, and so I've gotten rid of all the fancy fabrics for the most part. I think I've got a few scraps of things that I had a particular affinity for, but I've gotten rid of almost all synthetic fibers. I'm really trying to focus on working with things that I enjoy working with. So I'm primarily down to keeping just a small assortment of buttons that are not natural materials, and gone to mostly mother of pearl, and I have some wood and bone. I've kept a few things that I have specific ideas for or need for. I've got a bunch of old china buttons. I've got a lot of vintage buttons because my grandmother used to let us take buttons out of her box when we were growing up. So all my cousins that are around my age, we all had collected various buttons from her. So I need to look at how long my thread is here. I think we can get one more done before I need a new thread. Again, I'm doing my 2 knots for my beading thread just to keep it much more secure. I have known people that put a drop of fray check on their thread. I try not to use that unless I have no choice. So just a little bit to go here, not too much. I'm going to do an extra long length again, even though I have a short distance, because I'll be able to use it on the next seam. You know, one of the things I haven't mentioned is you can always use this product called Thread Magic. It's a silicone product, and you just pull it across. What it does is it changes the static of the thread, and that's part of what helps keep it from knotting and twisting. I'll leave a link to it down in the description box below if you're interested in that. I feel like you can feel it, so I do think it leaves a little bit of residue. And I do think it helps if I remember to use it. So it's just moving right along here. We're going to be done with both of these in pretty good time here. I'm glad for that. I'm not being super careful how these get sewn on here. I'm just stitching them on the end, and if they're a little crooked, that's okay, because it just means that they'll pick up the light a little differently. The stems all go slightly different directions, so it's not as noticeable That's when you've got something straight up and down. So I think that's going to be just about it here. I've just got a few more of these to put on, and those two seams will be done. I pulled that one a little tight. Get these last couple of beads on. This is just great, calm, meditative work, you know, when you've just got something simple and doesn't involve a lot of thought process. You can just sit here and stitch. Make sure. All right, couple of knots. We got to put these beads back before I spill them. I can see where this is going. So let's take a look at these two seams. You can see the little sparkles of the beads along here, and it really helps. These are not the best colors to be filming because they just don't show up as well as they should. I am pretty happy with how this seam turned out. Just adding that single bead in the middle of those just brought that seam to life. So those are done. So everything from here back is done. And so now the only things we have left to work on are these 4 seams. So this one will be next. Then we'll probably work on this long one, and then this one and this one. I think we're going to call it a day, and I'll figure out what I'm going to be doing on these seams, because I want to balance what I've done on this first end with what happens down here. And so that's going to come into play. I think I've gotten heavier embellishments towards this side, so I need to lighten it up in keeping with what I did down here. So I think we're definitely going to be doing this stitch, this one, and this one. So that's going to be the plan going forward. Thank you for watching today. I really appreciate you being here. Pardon the cat. Get down, Mushu. Get down! Happy stitching, and I'll see you in the next video.